You believe you're in control. Every decision you make, every action you take, and every choice you follow, it feels like it comes from you. You think, I chose this. I decided that. This is what I wanted. But what if that's not true? What if the feeling of control is just that? A feeling. Because if you really pay attention, there are moments where something happens before you decide. You reach for your phone before thinking. You react emotionally before understanding. You say something before realizing it, and only after you explain it, you justify it. You tell yourself a story about why you did it, but the action already happened. So who made the decision? Was it really you, or was it something faster, something automatic, something beneath your awareness? Because your brain processes information before you're conscious of it, milliseconds before, which means by the time you decide something, the process has already started, and your conscious mind is catching up, not leading, reacting, not choosing. And that changes everything, because if your decisions begin before you're aware of them, then what you call control might not be control at all. It might be interpretation, a story your brain tells you after the fact, to make everything feel coherent, to make everything feel like it came from you, even when it didn't. And once you start noticing this, you can't unsee it. The gap between action and awareness. The moment where something happens and only after you realize it, that's where control disappears, or at least where it becomes something very different than you thought. Your brain decides first. Your brain is always active, processing information, predicting outcomes, preparing responses. And it does this constantly, without waiting for your awareness. Because awareness is slow, it's limited, it can only handle a small amount of information at a time. But your brain handles everything simultaneously, which means it has to make decisions. Before you're even aware there's a decision to be made. Think about how quickly you react to a sound, to a message, to a situation. That reaction doesn't start with thought, it starts with processing. Your brain evaluates, chooses, acts, and then your awareness arrives and tries to make sense of it. That's why you often feel like, I didn't mean to do that. I don't know why I reacted like that. That just happened. Because it did before you could stop it, before you could choose differently. Because the decision was already in motion, and your conscious mind was not in control of it. It was observing it, explaining it. And this isn't a flaw, it's how your brain is designed to act fast, to prioritize efficiency, to react before thinking. Because in the past, that meant survival. But now, it creates something else. A system where most of your behavior is automatic, driven by patterns, by conditioning, by learned responses, not by conscious choice. And the more those patterns repeat, the stronger they become, the faster they activate, the less awareness is involved. Until eventually, you're not deciding, you're reacting and calling it decision. The illusion of free will. Free will feels real because it feels personal, intentional, controlled. But what if free will is limited? What if most of what you call choice is just selection between options your brain already prepared? Options based on your past experiences, your habits, your conditioning, your environment. Which means you're not choosing freely. You're choosing within boundaries. Boundaries you didn't create consciously. And the more you stay inside those boundaries, the more it feels like control, even when it's not. Because everything you choose still follows the same patterns, the same tendencies, the same reactions. That's why people feel stuck, not because they don't have options, but because they keep choosing from the same set. A set defined by their past, by their programming, by their patterns, and until those patterns change, the choices don't change. And if the choices don't change, the outcomes don't change. And if the outcomes don't change, it feels like life is repeating. Because, in a way, it is. You're following patterns. Most of what you do doesn't begin in the present. It comes from the past, not consciously, not intentionally, but automatically. Because your brain doesn't operate in isolated moments, it operates in patterns, Every time you experience something, well, your brain stores it. Not just the memory, but the response. How you reacted, what you felt, what you did next. And the next time something similar happens, your brain doesn't start from zero. It reuses what it already knows. It activates the closest pattern, the fastest response, the most familiar reaction. And it does this instantly, before you're aware of it, before you can question it, before you can change it. That's why you respond the same way, to the same kinds of situations, even when you don't want to, even when you tell yourself, this time will be different, because the moment arrives, and your brain takes over, not because you chose it, but because it recognized it. And recognition triggers repetition. This is how patterns work. They don't ask for permission. They don't wait for awareness. They execute automatically. And the more a pattern is used, the stronger it becomes, not just in memory, but in speed, efficiency, priority. Your brain starts favoring it, activating it faster, more consistently, until eventually it becomes your default, something you don't question, something you don't even notice, something that feels like you. But it's not you. It's a pattern, running, executing, repeating. And here's where it gets deeper. Patterns don't just control what you do, they influence what you notice, what you focus on, what you expect. Because your brain is constantly filtering reality, highlighting what matches your patterns, ignoring what doesn't, so you don't just act in patterns, you see through them, you interpret the world through them, you experience reality through them, which means your perception is not neutral, it's shaped, filtered, guided by everything you've repeated before, and the more those patterns stay active, the more they define your experience, until eventually it feels like reality itself, but it's not. It's interpretation, and if your interpretation is based on patterns, then your reality is too, which means if you never question your patterns, you never question your reality, you just live inside it, repeating, reacting, continuing, without ever realizing that something else is possible. Because your brain doesn't show you everything. It shows you what matches what you already know, and what you already know is built from repetition, which means you're not just following patterns, you're living inside them. Real control. If most of your behavior is automatic, if your reactions happen before awareness, if your patterns repeat without permission, then what is control? Because it's clearly not what you thought. Control is not force. It's not discipline in the way most people imagine. It's not pushing harder, trying more, resisting everything. Because if control were just effort, you wouldn't feel stuck. You wouldn't repeat what you hate. You wouldn't return to what drains you. So control must be something else, something deeper, something more precise, and it is. Control begins with awareness, not awareness as a concept, but as a moment, a very specific moment, the moment between trigger and response. That moment is small, almost invisible. Most people miss it completely because their patterns are faster than their awareness. But when you start noticing it, everything changes, because that moment is where control exists, not before, not after, but right there, between what happens and what you do next. That's the only place where you're not fully automatic, where you're not just reacting, where you're not just repeating, where something else becomes possible. But here's the challenge. That moment feels uncomfortable because it interrupts the pattern, and your brain doesn't like interruptions. It prefers continuity, flow, repetition. So when you pause, when you don't immediately react, it creates tension, a strange internal pressure, a feeling that something is unfinished. And that feeling pushes you to act, to go back, to complete the loop. But if you stay in that moment, if you don't rush it, if you just observe it, you start to see something clearly. The urge is not you. The reaction is not you. It's a pattern trying to complete itself. And you're watching it, and that separation changes everything, because now you're not inside the pattern. You're observing it. And once you observe it, you gain distance. And in that distance, there's choice, real choice. not the illusion of choice that comes after action, but actual choice, before action, the ability to do something different, even if it's small, even if it's difficult, even if it feels unnatural. And the more you practice this, the more that moment expands, the gap becomes clearer, more accessible, more stable, until eventually it becomes part of your awareness. And now, you're not just reacting to life, you're participating in it, consciously, intentionally. And that's what control actually is. Not total control, not perfect control, but enough control to interrupt the patterns that used to run automatically. Enough control to step outside the loop. Enough control to begin something new. So now, everything connects, not just in theory, but in experience. Your cravings, your habits, your identity, your decisions, they all follow the same structure. They all come from patterns built over time, reinforced through repetition, activated automatically, and what you've been calling control was often just continuation of what was already happening. A system running in the background, quietly, efficiently, relentlessly, and you were inside it, not seeing it, not questioning it, just following it, because it felt normal, because it felt natural, because it felt like you. But now, that illusion is broken. You've seen the patterns, you've seen the loops, you've seen how your brain operates, and once you see it, you can't go back to not seeing it, because now, every reaction stands out, every habit becomes visible, every loop becomes clear. You notice the moment before you act, the urge before you follow it, the pattern before it completes itself. And in that awareness something shifts, because now you're not fully inside it anymore. You're partially outside, observing, understanding, recognizing. And that recognition is where everything begins, not where everything changes instantly, but where change becomes possible. Because before awareness, there is no choice, only repetition, only continuation, only patterns running. But after awareness, there is space, and inside that space, there is something new, not a new identity, not a new personality, but a new relationship with your own mind, one where you don't automatically believe everything you feel, one where you don't automatically follow every urge, one where you don't automatically repeat every pattern. And that changes everything, because now you're not trying to control your brain, you're understanding it. And understanding is what gives you leverage, the ability to step back, to pause, to choose, even if it's small, even if it's inconsistent, even if it's difficult. Because control is not about perfection, it's about interruption, the interruption of patterns, the interruption of loops, the interruption of automatic behavior. And every time you interrupt it, you create something new, a new possibility, a new direction, a new outcome. And that's how change begins, not through force, not through effort alone, but through awareness, through recognition, through seeing clearly. And once you see clearly, you're no longer just reacting to your life, you're participating in it. And that is the closest thing to control you'll ever have.